Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm diving into the world of politics. We're going way back in time to meet a super smart guy named Aristotle. Aristotle was really into figuring out how things worked, especially governments. He believed there were different ways to run a society and that some ways were better than others. Aristotle wrote a really important book called Politics. Get ready for some big words like monarchy and oligarchy. But don't worry, I'll explain everything in a way that's easy to understand. Aristotle believed that governments could be grouped into two main categories, good and bad. He said the good governments were all about what was best for everyone, for the whole community. He called these true forms of government. The bad governments, according to Aristotle, were only interested in helping out the people in charge. He called these perverted or corrupt forms of government. So what were these different forms of government that Aristotle came up with? Well, he said there were 3 good ones and 3 bad ones. On the good side, we have monarchy, aristocracy, and polity. On the bad side, we have tyranny, oligarchy, and democracy. Democracy? But isn't that supposed to be a good thing? That's what we're going to find out. Stay tuned as we explore each of these forms of government in more detail. Okay, let's start with monarchy. Imagine a kingdom ruled by a king or a queen. Aristotle thought this could be a good thing, but only if the ruler was super wise and kind. This ideal ruler, according to Aristotle, would be totally selfless. They wouldn't be interested in using their power for personal gain or to get rich. Instead, they would only care about what's best for their subjects, the people they ruled over. But Aristotle knew that finding a ruler like that was like finding a unicorn. Super rare. And that's where the danger of monarchy comes in. He worried that if the ruler wasn't a wise and selfless person, monarchy could easily turn into something bad. That's why Aristotle believed that even though monarchy had the potential to be a good system, it was also very fragile. Next up, we have aristocracy. Aristotle used the word aristocracy to describe a government ruled by a small group of people who were considered the best or the most virtuous. Aristotle believed that true aristocrats were people of exceptional character and intelligence. They were well-educated, dedicated to public service, and deeply committed to the well-being of the entire community. In an aristocracy, this elite group would use their wisdom and experience to make decisions that benefited everyone. They wouldn't be driven by greed or self-interest, but by a genuine desire to serve the common good. But just like with monarchy, Aristotle recognized that aristocracy had its downsides. The biggest challenge was figuring out who actually qualified as one of the best people. If a group of greedy or power-hungry individuals managed to seize control, they could use their position to benefit themselves at the expense of everyone else. So far, we've looked at monarchy, ruled by one, and aristocracy, ruled by a few. Now, let's talk about polity, Aristotle's idea of the best form of government when many people share power. Imagine a government where citizens from all walks of life have a voice. Not just the wealthy or the powerful, but everyday people like farmers, artisans, and merchants. In a polity, everyone would have a chance to participate in decision-making, ensuring that no one group held all the power. Aristotle believed that this kind of mixed government would be more stable and just than either monarchy or aristocracy. By giving everyone a stake in the system, it would be less likely to devolve into tyranny or oligarchy. That's why he stressed the importance of education and civic virtue in a polity. In Aristotle's view, a polity thrived when citizens were engaged and informed, actively participating in the political process and holding their leaders accountable. We've now explored Aristotle's 3 true forms of government: monarchy, aristocracy, and polity. These were the systems he believed had the greatest potential to create a just and harmonious society. But Aristotle also warned that even the best-intentioned governments could become corrupt if they weren't careful. Monarchy could easily degenerate into tyranny if the ruler became greedy or power-hungry. Aristocracy could slip into oligarchy if a small group of wealthy or influential individuals seized control. And even polity could become a distorted democracy if the pursuit of individual interests overshadowed the common good. Aristotle understood that no system of government was perfect or immune to the corrupting influences of power. In the next part, we'll delve deeper into these corrupt forms of government and explore how they manifested in history. Remember that wise and benevolent king we talked about earlier? Well, in a tyranny, he's gone rogue. Aristotle saw tyranny as the ugliest distortion of monarchy. It's what happens when a single ruler throws aside any pretense of virtue and governs solely through fear and violence. In a tyranny, the ruler's word is law, and anyone who dares to question their authority is met with swift and brutal punishment. The tyrant trusts no one, not even their closest advisors, and lives in constant fear of being overthrown. Life under a tyranny is oppressive and terrifying. The people are denied basic freedoms, their voices silenced, their lives controlled by the whims of a single power-hungry individual. History is full of examples of tyrannical rule, from the Roman Emperor Caligula to the brutal reign of Genghis Khan. If tyranny is the perversion of monarchy, then oligarchy is the twisted reflection of aristocracy. Instead of being ruled by the best and most virtuous, an oligarchy places power in the hands of a small, elite group, usually the wealthy and powerful. In this system, the ruling class uses its position to enrich itself at the expense of everyone else. They rig the system in their favor, passing laws that benefit their businesses, hoarding wealth, and exploiting the poor and vulnerable. Justice becomes a commodity available only to those who can afford it. Oligarchies often maintain their power through a combination of wealth, influence, and control over vital resources. They may use their economic clout to manipulate elections, buy off politicians, and silence dissent. Throughout history, many societies have fallen prey to oligarchic rule, from the ancient Roman Republic to the era of European colonialism. We usually think of democracy as a good thing, right? And it can be. But Aristotle had some reservations. He worried that if not implemented carefully, democracy could easily devolve into what he called mob rule. Imagine a society where the majority gets to decide everything, regardless of whether those decisions are just or beneficial to the minority. That's the danger Aristotle saw in democracy. He feared that the poor and uneducated, driven by envy and resentment, might use their numerical superiority to seize the property of the wealthy, leading to chaos and instability. However, it's important to remember that the democracy Aristotle was describing is very different from the representative democracies we have today. In ancient Athens, citizens participated directly in government, voting on laws and policies in a large assembly. The question for us today is how to balance the ideal of majority rule with the protection of individual rights and the prevention of tyranny by the majority. So, we've explored Aristotle's 6 forms of government: the good, the bad, and the ugly. But what does this all mean for us today? Are these ancient categories still relevant in the 21st century? The answer is a resounding yes. While the world has changed dramatically since Aristotle's time, the fundamental questions he grappled with about power, justice, and the best way to govern a society remain as relevant as ever. As we look around the world today, we see echoes of these ancient forms of government in various forms. Okay, so we've learned about Aristotle's ideas about government. But how do they stack up against the governments we see in the Western world today? It gets a little tricky here because there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Western countries often pride themselves on being democracies. We vote, we have rights, and we expect our leaders to be accountable to the people. That sounds a lot like Aristotle's polity, right? A system where power is shared and everyone has a voice. But, and this is a big but, things aren't always so simple. Take the United States, for example. It's a representative democracy, which means we elect people to make decisions on our behalf. This representative system can be really effective, but it also creates distance between the people and their government. So, we don't have Aristotle's polity in its purest form. Our modern democracies are more complex, with layers of elected officials representing us at local, regional, and national levels. This system, with its checks and balances, is designed to prevent any one person or group from gaining too much power. It's supposed to ensure that different viewpoints are considered, and that decisions are made through compromise and consensus. But this system also relies on a big assumption, that the people we elect to represent us will actually do so fairly and effectively. What happens when they don't? What happens when special interests hold more sway than the needs of everyday citizens? Let's talk about the elephant in the room: money. Aristotle might not have had to deal with billion-dollar corporations and super PACs, but he definitely understood the corrupting influence of wealth and power. In many Western democracies, there's a growing concern that the gap between the rich and the poor is widening, and that this economic inequality is spilling over into the political sphere. When a small number of wealthy individuals and corporations can pour vast sums of money into elections, it raises serious questions about who's really calling the shots. This is where we start to see shades of oligarchy creeping in. Individualism versus the common good, a balancing act. Another key aspect of Western societies is their emphasis on individualism. We value personal freedom, self-reliance, and the pursuit of our own goals and dreams, and that's a good thing. But it can also create challenges when it comes to governing. Aristotle recognized the importance of individual freedom, but he also stressed the significance of civic virtue and the common good. He believed that a healthy society depends on citizens who are willing to put the needs of the community ahead of their own selfish desires. Finding the right balance between individualism and the common good is an ongoing challenge for democracies. How do we protect individual rights while also promoting social responsibility? How do we encourage people to participate in civic life and work together to address shared problems? These are questions that require careful consideration and ongoing dialogue. And they're especially important in today's world, where we face complex global challenges that require collective action and cooperation. The information age knew battlegrounds for power. The internet and social media have transformed communication, information consumption, and political participation. They can empower democracy by connecting citizens and holding leaders accountable. But they also spread misinformation and manipulate public opinion. We must be discerning consumers, critical thinkers, and engaged citizens. The rise of the strongman, a modern tyrant. Okay, so we've talked about how money can muddy the waters of democracy even in Western countries. But what about the people in charge? Have you noticed that in recent years, more and more leaders seem to be, well, a little bossy? Aristotle would probably say they're leaning towards tyranny, but in a modern way. We're not talking about kings and queens throwing people in dungeons anymore, thank goodness. It's more subtle than that. Think about leaders who use fear and division to gain power. They might blame problems on certain groups like immigrants or minorities. They might attack journalists who criticize them, and they might weaken the rules that keep governments fair and balanced. These leaders often present themselves as strong, decisive figures who can fix things. They appeal to people who are feeling frustrated or left behind. But the danger is that they can erode democratic institutions and norms, concentrating power in their own hands. Remember that maze you loved as a kid, trying to find your way to the center? Now, imagine that maze filled with lobbyists and corporate interests. Navigating politics and big money feels just like that. Aristotle worried about the wealthy's influence, and he was right. Today, powerful groups represent oil companies and pharmaceutical giants. They spend tons of money to sway politicians. Not all lobbying is bad. Some advocate for important causes, but the wealthiest groups often have the loudest voices. This can drown out the needs of everyday people. Remember when your parents told you that two wrongs don't make a right? Our political systems seem to have forgotten that basic rule. Instead of solving problems, we're divided and pitted against each other. It's like a reality TV show, but with real-life consequences. Social media amplifies the drama, feeding us outrage and anger. Aristotle believed a healthy democracy requires informed citizens and respectful debate. To preserve our democracies, we need to bridge divides and rediscover civil discourse. So, we've covered a lot of ground, from power-hungry leaders to the influence of money to the dangers of division. But if there's one common thread running through all of this, it's the erosion of trust. Trust is essential for a healthy democracy. We need to trust that our leaders have our best interests at heart, that the system isn't rigged against us, and that we can engage in respectful debate with our fellow citizens. But all around the world, we're seeing that trust being chipped away. People are losing faith in their governments, in the media, and even in each other. And when trust erodes, it creates fertile ground for cynicism, apathy, and even extremism. So what can we do about it? That's what we're going to be exploring in the next and final part of our series. Stay tuned. A mirror to our world. What do you see? We've traveled back in time with Aristotle, exploring his ideas about government. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? This isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's about understanding our world and our place in it. Think of Aristotle's classifications as a mirror. When you look at your government, what do you see reflected back? Respond in the comments below and let me know where you are from and what kind of government you feel you are currently living under. Beyond labels, the power of active citizenship. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by politics, feeling like our voices don't matter. Aristotle believed citizenship was a responsibility. A healthy society needs active, engaged citizens. It's not just about voting. Stay informed and engage in respectful dialogue. Hold officials accountable. Active citizenship takes many forms. Volunteer, organize events, or start conversations. Together, we can shape a just and equitable society. Your voice, your choice, shaping the future. The future of our governments and societies is not predetermined. It's shaped by the choices we make and the actions we take. So use your voice. Speak up about the issues that matter to you. Challenge injustice and inequality wherever you see it. And never underestimate the power of your actions to create positive change. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.